Here we go. Boom, boom, boom. Hi, this is Eric Stromquist. Welcome to episode 302 of ControlTalk NOW, the Smart Buildings Videocast and podcast for the week ending February 10th, 2019. My name is Eric Stromquist, and I am joined by your host and mine, the man, the myth, the legend, the one, the only. It never gets old saying this. Kenny Smyers, the controls man from Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. And Kenny, we're going to be talking about the future today, buddy.
We sure are. We got two outstanding guests. We have a brilliant woman from the Silicon Valley area who has a global experience, and she writes books about the future, particularly with the autonomous vehicles. Just amazing information that is going to filter in and pollinate into our industry. So we'll see some interesting cross-pollination of technology and possibilities. And then we've got a stalwart in the industry coming up that's, I've known him probably close to 30 years now, and he's always made the most intelligent comments in the meetings because he really gets it. He's, has all the technical capability, prowess, engineering prowess, writes specifications, and then we have some interesting conversation coming up about the two-step distribution channel, the past, present, and future.
Right. And I think Mike's, our second guest, is going to sort of ground us a little bit because, again, you more than ever with change so rapidly, we really have to sort of look out and then come back to now.
Sure.
So I think this show is going to give you some great insights to what the future might look like and how you can participate in it. But before we do that, Kenny, I got to tell you, remember at one point in time, I sort of jokingly said, talking about change, that at some point in time, they'll be putting a chip in people's head with all kinds of memory boost and stuff like that. Our friend Elon Musk has a company that he's developed to do just such a thing called Neutronics, I think it was. And I want you to know, Elon, you can put one in my head right away, but essentially they put a chip in that will have you process faster. It will do complex calculations, and it'll have you have more memory. Now, he's not there yet. I mean, it might be a few years out, but I don't know about you, but are you in on that?
Well, I'll get a couple chips. Give me one for the brain. Give me one for somewhere else. Give me a couple for my knees. I'm ready. I'm ready to roll. No, I saw some of that stuff too, and it's going to be interesting because it's such a taboo thing with that the 666 thing, that came out of the spiritual worlds and religious worlds about how that's a bad thing. When you have something plugged in, and it's helping you augment your existence on Earth. I used to be kind of in that arena where you don't mess around with nature, but now I'm seeing some of the things, and as I get older, and I see people getting some of these bio treatments where they're taking whatever's available
or whatever.
Absolutely. So I say go for it. I say if you but the problem is, again, it'll be a matter of economics. There'll be people who can afford it and people who can't, so it won't be equally distributed, and so you have all these moral and social issues. But I go for it. Go
right. But you bring up a good point, and part of the reason me bringing this out, and you sort of segue nicely into it, is when you talk about the future, you talk about change, and I think the biggest barrier to change is attitude. People not wanting to try something new, they're afraid of trying something new, or they try too much new stuff and never develop any substance. So change, it's a tough game because if you hop in too early, you sink with the ship. If you hop in too late, well, you're just too
missed
late.
The ship, yeah.
So excited. We're going to be talking about the future, and we've got the perfect guest. How about introducing her?
We sure do. In fact, we have our very first technology futurist on the Control Talk Now show, and we have an incredible author. She's an academician. We'd like to welcome Sudha Jamsi to Control Talk Now. Welcome to the show.
Welcome.
Thank
Sudha.
you for having me. Thank you for having me. It's a pleasure.
Well, I guess the first question I got to ask you is, how did you become a futurist?
I come from a tech background where I built products and worked in technology industry. My last corporate job was at eBay. And I used to work with data, heading their mobile analytics division. So it was focused on how do you shop from the phone and iPad and across different platforms. And I was watching this world of everything getting connected, and it was started with the wearables for me. And so I get excited about new technologies. I knew that all my life. And being in operational experience, bringing operational experience from industry kind of grounds me. And I started thinking about, okay, is this hype or is this real? And I realized there was so much hype and noise about Internet of Things and artificial intelligence and how everything is going to be connected, but nothing was set in stone. So I got excited and started thinking and researching, and then I wrote my books. And that's how I became a technology futurist, where I predict, stick my head out and say, 2020, there's going to be AI or autonomous vehicles. Or 2030 is my prediction for autonomous vehicles. 2020, I see AI everywhere.
Yeah, well, I just wanted to applaud you because Eric has already read one of your books, and I'm going to catch up to him. But the one book, the 2030 Driverless World, the business transformation of autonomous vehicles, that's how you caught our attention at first with Automated Buildings. Last edition of Automated Buildings, we saw the Nissan Energy Share article that you put in there, and it was an amazing concept. Could you just briefly cover the incredible technologies and highlights of that article?
So that was about how buildings can be powered using autonomous vehicles. So everybody thinks of autonomous vehicles as, hey, we don't need to drive, and a car is just going to drive us around everywhere. In reality, for everything that gets connected, we need energy. And so there are these batteries, which are for electric vehicles, becoming two-way. So the vehicle can charge itself and then hold the charge in the battery so that it can drive. So now what Nissan did, and a few other car companies have also tested this out in Europe, but Nissan brought it to US and said, hey, we are just not only having a two-way battery for the car to hold the charge, but we are going to show you how it can charge a building. And so they have actually powered their own headquarters here. And so that got me thinking, and that is called V2G, which is vehicle to grid. Essentially, the car can give the charge back to the electric grid. And if you think about it, it is drawing from the grid, but it is also sending back to the grid, but it is managing what is called as demand response. Amazing. And that got me thinking, and that's what this article is about. So V2G, what if there's a blackout? You could just get an autonomous vehicle driving up and charging the building back. And that's the core concept of that article.
Well, it seems like with more and more, I mean, Kenny and I remember when Tesla came out with the power wall for the homes and all, where it could actually store the solar energy. And with the advent of blockchain and things like that, it seems like, we got a whole brave new world when it comes to energy. I remember growing up, for example, that my parents would always say the safest thing you can invest in, because they're bulletproof, is the utilities. But speak about how that might change and how that would work. Because I think for our integrators and building owners, this is something to be interested in.
So, like I said, we need energy for anything that's going to be connected. And with the new world of everything getting connected, there is a whole concept of vehicle, not just vehicles. I want to redo this part. Thank you for that option. Yes. So buildings are going to need charge. Buildings are going to need electricity, not just for the regular functioning, but as more and more devices get connected inside the building. So to bring this charge, the building itself could have solar panels. Like I have solar panels in my house, and it goes back to my grid. It doesn't just power my house directly. It's possible that could happen. But what is evolving, and you mentioned blockchain, what is evolving is there are small microgrids that's being created by many startups using blockchain, where there could be a little substation just made for your building or for a office complex. And so it doesn't have to bring charge from somewhere across the country and go through transmission in bad weather. It just on demand, it will produce what you need and it'll give it to you. And in fact, I was talking to somebody recently who works in NLX, which is the Italian utility company, Enel's R&D unit here, and she was talking about how she uses artificial intelligence and machine learning to actually look at every meter in a building and predict what would be the demand and what is the optimal time to turn on certain instruments in the complex.
And I think that gets back to our systems integrators that are putting in data analytics packages in the buildings and collecting the data. So what I hear you saying is an opportunity for our customers, both the owners and the integrators, is to be able to bring those data points in. And then, I mean, they could correlate that with impending weather or whatever. And then from that, they can predict how much energy they're going to need and if they need to go to an alternative grid, correct?
That's right. That's right.
Right. In fact, go ahead. I'm sorry.
No, I thought that was a segue into data. If you want to ask something else, I can wait.
Oh, we'll segue any way you want to segue, because Ken and I are big seguers.
This is so much fun. I have to tell you, I'm having so much fun here.
We're having fun too. I'm so glad you're on the show with us. This is great.
No, let's go with the segment. What I was going to do is just mention that one of the other articles on Ken St. Clair thing, they did that exactly what Eric mentioned. It showed by having Sky Foundry, John Petsy contributed to the article, and then had an expert on sustainable energy, and then it had an expert on the grid markets and how electricity is priced based on how much is available and how, and then we always do peak demand. Peak demand is a very important part of our world, because once you go into peak demand, you will pay that rate, the highest possible rate for the rest of 365 days. And you have 15-minute windows. So you have to have some pretty reliable metering, reliable software, and a good program. And then we do those strategies. Strategy one might be change the set points up or down, or stagger the equipment. Every odd number of pieces of equipment shuts off for 15 minutes. So we live in that world. It's a smaller, easier world. But when we start talking about the grid and the real like a microcosm we live in, you guys are talking macro, and so we're not familiar with the macro world. It's just fascinating to me to think a car can play an important role in the grid and power up a building in the emergencies, like a power generator.
Right. What I hear Sudha saying is, because Sudha, in our world before, it was like Kenny said, you turn equipment off, which basically means somebody in the building might be getting too hot or too cold because you're turning the power off to eliminate that peak demand. Sudha, what I hear you saying is, with the advent of the microgrids and the cars that can power a building and stuff like that, is if you start to hit one of those peaks, you could just change over to an alternative energy source for that short period of time. So, Kenny, it seems like now we could get the best of both worlds.
Well, that's okay. And we saw that our Department of Energy already experimented with thermostats, Sudha, where they turned all the power off to the thermostats and let the battery work the thermostat for 3 or 4 days as a test measure to see, the feasibility of, redirecting that electricity from 1 million or 5 million thermostats. They are now using their battery. The alternative power that Eric mentioned is the self-contained battery, which will recharge itself once the electricity is restored to to each residents. But okay, I do have a segue point where you said something about different worlds, and when we talk about that, we're fascinated by the inflection points where the industry changes. Eric's a big fan of transformative change versus trendy changes, and what's going on with this new world you see? I mean, for the disruption, you had a term creating and I never heard this before, cascade of destruction. I think that is a fascinating term. Tell us a little bit about that, and then the new world that comes after.
So I teach autonomous vehicle business and IoT business, or Internet of Things business, at Stanford Continuing Studies, and also have my own online site called Driverless World School, where I focus on new technologies. How are they going to impact a particular industry? And what I find fascinating is it's never one industry. It starts with one industry, and you think that's not my competition. I'm going to just look at people who are in the similar business. And there's a whole cascade from different industries. So back to what we were talking about, cars, people who are looking at self-driving cars are thinking about this as it's going to impact transportation. It's going to impact automotive industry. Maybe it will cascade into the parts suppliers of automotive. But when it comes to the building and it talks to utilities, who thought utilities and automotive had something in common? But now they're going to create that cascade effect. Wow. That's what I meant as the cascade of disruption. So inside the building, when you talk about adding connectivity to the building, it doesn't have to just be the one power source of the building or the facility manager who's watching, how to manage power for the building. There are so many appliances inside the building. So that connectivity or the data ownership could come from many different players. So one is HVAC manufacturers. They could add connectivity. They could have access to the data. Or even like somebody who makes faucets in the bathrooms in buildings could actually add connectivity. And think of this crazy use case. It's not too crazy, but feasible. So somebody is making faucets and selling it to buildings. And that's their business. So they think of themselves as we manufacture, and here we are a B2B business selling to, buildings, right? When they add connectivity or they add some kind of sensor, now they can actually keep track of how much water is being used as the faucet is on. Oh, that's one data. The other thing is they could actually start gathering information about what time of the day is this usage, and is there, what frequency, how many people are coming and opening the tap and closing the tap. So they could have data, this faucet maker could have data on how many people are in the building at any given point of time. And that could be an information they could provide to the facilities manager to manage their fire code. So it's a totally different way of thinking about it. That's what I called as cascade. So the facilities manager should not just think about how do I manage my energy usage and water usage and keep my people safe, but think about who else is adding connectivity in their existing suppliers and whether they can gather data from that to do something that's going to change their way of doing business, which is good for their customers.
I think it's almost imperative if you're going to survive in this new connected world, this IoT world, that you have to be thinking in those terms. And again, if you think about our listeners on this show, Sudha, are everybody from manufacturers of controls to the people that install them, to the people that specify them, and the building owners. So like Ken said, it keeps using the term inflection point. And in your book, IoT Disruption, which I highly encourage everybody to read. I mean, you can get it on Kindle for $3. I don't think you charge enough for that, by the way. So it's so useful. You're saying that you're saying between 26 and 50 billion devices will be connected by 2020, which is next year.
Yeah.
And you also, I think your definition of what IoT is that you had in that book, I think is really enlightening. I've never heard that quite before. Do you mind telling our community what you think IoT is? Because I think it sheds light on how they might be able to come in and capitalize on this structural change we're seeing.
So IoT stands for Internet of Things, and it is about adding connectivity to ordinary things. So it's like your thermostat or chairs or even your building as a unit, right? And people typically think of it as, okay, it's a piece of technology. Now I'm going to add sensors. It's going to give data. It goes to the cloud. That's one definition of IoT. The way I look at it is, today we connect to the internet using our mobile phones or using computers. In future, when any ordinary thing can have internet connectivity, it is going to share information about what is the temperature, what is the humidity, and how long is something going on, is there movement, and cameras are going to capture videos and pictures. All of that becomes data, and when that data is accessed in real time, it creates a whole new world. So for me, my definition of IoT is a whole new way of living, whole new way of working. It's a whole different world, what I call as the driverless world. It's not just about the driverless car, but it is about a connected world where whatever problems we are used to just living with, thinking that, like traffic, we put up with traffic in our commute, or I have to turn my garage door on and off manually. Instead, all that could be done remotely because now it's connected to the internet. So it's a different way of thinking and living. And I believe we are getting to that world somewhere around the 2030 timeframe. By 2020, that number you quoted from my book is from Gartner. Gartner has predicted that there will be 50 billion devices that are connected. And I wrote that book, the first one, IoT Disruptions, I wrote that in 2015. And I've been watching, and we are getting to that number. So recent data shows that there are so many of these devices that are being connected. So by that, it still holds good by 2020. we're just in the beginning of 2019, so it almost gives us 2 years time.
But Sudha, the piece that you had that I want our community to hear, because I thought this was absolutely brilliant, because all that you did talk about in the book, but you made a statement in there that I want our community to hear, because I think it really sheds a light on this. It allows problems to be solved now that could not be solved before we had IoT and all the sensor data. And I think if our community can begin to think in those terms, we're going to see so many opportunities, because what you're saying is that with all this stuff coming, I mean, it's a tsunami, it's a wave. You can either be, drowned by it, or you can ride the wave. And I think to ride the wave, you have to be thinking in terms of what problems can this solve? What can you create with this, as opposed to just reacting to it? You have to be part of the creation process, I think.
Yep. So I was recently at Stanford Energy Week, and students share a lot of posters of students share poster sessions of their work, and there was so much machine learning or artificial intelligence projects related to smart buildings. It could be that Ken Sinclair got me thinking about that with the recent article I wrote for him, but it was everywhere all around me. So there was one student who was sharing this machine learning model that she was building about tracking energy usage in appliances in the house. So the refrigerator, washing machine, dishwasher from a home setting, and it could be HVAC and other equipments in a factory setting. Thinking of each equipment as a thing and looking at how much energy is it using, when it is using, what are the factors that is contributing, and then making a prediction based on which you decide the health of the device, the health of when it needs to go down for serviceability, or when you need to turn it on or off so you can manage your workload on the grid.
AI is something fascinating. I'd like to sort of segue into that a little bit. And before I do that, I just have to tell you something. Kenny, I've been doing the podcast for a long time, and I edit the EQ on the sound, and it's you touch and go, you try to figure it out. I just bought this plugin a couple of weeks ago, and it uses artificial intelligence. So it listens to a sample of the audio, and then it makes the adjustments. And I have to tell you, it's almost instantaneous, and it's spot on. So I think we're going to see more and more artificial intelligence in the building. And kind of where, just to give you a little background on how our industry typically has worked, for a long time we've had alarms. So the temperature gets too high, there's an alarm that gets triggered, and a maintenance or facilities engineer comes out and tries to fix the alarm. And as we got more and more sensors, we got more and more alarms, to the point that they can't respond to all the alarms. Then we've gone from alarm-based use of data to what we call rules-based data. So if the temperature, for example, goes above a certain set point, and 15 minutes later, you could try to reset it, and 15 minutes later, if it's still there, then we send the alarm out. And it sounds like what we're going to now. Kenny and I had a guest on called Dr. Igor Mezic a couple of years ago, and he had developed a self-learning algorithm where you didn't even have to come up with the rules. The sensor data, you just hook the sensors up to it, and it would figure out the correlations. Now, we've lost touch with Dr. Mezic, so we're not exactly sure that was a real thing or not. But could you comment from your experience on how you see artificial intelligence maybe playing in commercial buildings?
So I have the Nest thermostat in my home, and they call it a learning thermostat. So they started exactly like you were saying. They just gave us a unit, so we don't have to manually turn it on or off, and we can actually do it using an app that talks to the thermostat. Then it started learning at what times of the day when we are away, we are turning it to a low temperature, or what is our pattern. And so now it automatically sets it to what is optimal for our home. The same thing is applicable in a commercial setting. And also in a commercial setting, it is comfort and different zones. You want different temperatures. There could be different seasonality on what you do based on, say, if it's a factory and they do some kind of a production at certain peak hours, maybe you want the temperature, not just the temperature, it could be the whole humidity and everything else that is optimal for production setup. And so the thermostat learns. And at a fundamental level, artificial intelligence is about data. So for me, it's exciting because I'm excited about everything getting connected, which is IoT, and that produces a lot of data. And that just gives room to go create knowledge. And so artificial intelligence is about taking that data and automating things that make sense. and to solve specific problems. So today, artificial intelligence is what is called as narrow AI, which is it tries to solve a specific problem. So there are lots of AI. In your case of the recording software, you just want to cut the noise and give you an optimal background. So like that, there are many AI in the buildings, and it's taking feeds of data and it's optimizing to solve a problem. And we're going to solve all the problems that we just learn to live with.
Very cool. Well, Kenny, we're going to go on for a while here because I haven't even gotten to talking about the robots yet, but we're going to get there hopefully. So for our manufacturers that are making things like thermostats or HVAC units or whatever, because part of what you mentioned in the book is the whole thing about new jobs will be created. You have to think differently. So now you're working for, let's just say you're working for one of the major manufacturers. I don't know, Siemens, Honeywell, Johnson Controls is in the HVAC building, smart building controls industry. And they sit you down on day one and say, okay, what do we need to be thinking about 4 or 5 years from now? And what kind of people do we need to have on staff that we don't now? How would they change?
So people, when they hear about autonomous vehicles and IoT, typically talk about jobs going away. I look at it as jobs is actually a function of work, and there will always be work. So Siemens is actually active in the space. Bosch and a whole bunch of companies have already started adding connectivity to their equipments. So when they are actually making something that they're producing and manufacturing today, they need to add connectivity to it. What that means is they will add some sensors and they will add some kind of internet connectivity. And they need to, so then the future product that they will be selling 2 years down the line or 5 years down the line is going to be a connected product. So for that, what they need in terms of skills, and instead of saying hiring new kind of people, I'm a very big fan of training existing people because they know it's not like you want new technologists who just know about the internet to come and work in Siemens. You want people who know the DNA of Siemens, know the customers of Siemens, to actually add connectivity. So it's a skill about electronics, adding connectivity, which could be Bluetooth or talking to Wi-Fi, how that is done. And that is something that companies should be retraining their employees, as manufacturing companies specifically should be doing that. The next big skill is being data savvy. All this connectivity is producing data. So when a maker of HVAC says, I'm going to add connectivity, what does that mean? Why? There are various different use cases of what they could do once they have connectivity. So it will be good to train people on being data savvy, and for the company to strategically think about, why am I adding connectivity? Going back to, I'm a big fan, I do this with my students. I tell them, always pivot yourself on your customer. And if you keep them happy, your business will grow and you will stay whatever happens all around you. So they should stay focused on their customer and say, what other problems can I solve for my customer? In the building example, can I save more energy for them? Can I make it more convenient for them to manage their appliances inside the building so that they save energy, or they have their environment is more comfortable, or they are more safe, or they are in compliance to whatever the regulations? And those things are always on. There are a lot of things that is solved for, and everybody knows there are still problems where they manually kind of go do these things. And if they could let the facilities manager go on vacation, sit in a beach and use an app and look at what's going on in their building instead of, working round the clock and worrying. So they should think about what problem they can solve by adding the connectivity, which is being data savvy.
Well, we have moved in that direction pretty well now. In fact, we're at the point where most of the building automation systems have those capabilities for the smart devices and the apps, that they can be in the beach and they can see, like Eric mentioned, get an alarm, review it, silence it, try a reset. If it doesn't reset, then they could take dispatch somebody to fix it. So we're moving there, but we're dealing with like massive problems where the Department of Energy says we have 80% of our buildings, our commercial buildings out there, have little or no building automation system. So we saw, like Eric was saying, the majors, we call them the big manufacturers, and then a lot of small manufacturers moved towards we call it the race to the small space. That's taking maybe like a 25,000 square feet to 50,000 square feet building and bringing it all that IoT capability to it, and do it in a way that it's the best for the owner. So looking at the owner's best interest. Some people don't want graphics. They don't need to have all the bells and whistles that you sell. So we finally pared away things that you don't need so you can put a basic system in there. Now we're finding that we have a lack of technicians, and we have a lack of a sales model that we can get building owners take enough of their time and explain to them well enough that you need to make a change. And the sooner you make the change, the better, is because you'll get your return of investment in a year and a half, 2 years. And we just get so much pushback. We don't understand. Number one, we don't have enough technicians, and we don't have enough people coming into the pipeline. So, and then you're adding some information about being a data specialist. That's a new word. We'll have to come up with it. Have to get an AFIC or NAIC code from the federal government for data specialists, because I agree with everything you said there, but we don't seem to be able to future-proof ourselves quickly enough. We don't have enough people coming into the pipeline with great attitudes and training. We have school systems that take people and they're teaching them traditional things that don't really have commercial value. Once they get out of school, being an expert in history is great, but it's not going to get you into this new world you're talking about. So being in education and academic, and how are we institutionally fixing things? Are we making progress and we just don't know about it? See, that's why it's so fun to have people like you on the show, because your point of view is so much different than ours, but yet we're converging in the middle. At the end of the day, we're getting connected and we're having data exchange. But in your opinion, with some of the great things you say and how people can learn, so don't give up your specialty, but learn how to work with data.
Yeah.
Are we moving in the right direction as a whole?
I believe we are moving in the right direction. In fact, I travel around the world because I sit here in Silicon Valley, and I want to make sure that what I write or teach is not very Silicon Valley centered, because we are surrounded by too much technology. And so I travel around, meet with companies. I do some advisory work for cities on getting ready for this, what I call as mobility infrastructure for a driverless world. Like I do work on that. And I see a common pattern. Every big company which has an established customer base, they're making money and they have existing process in place, goes through this problem, what is called as the digital transformation problem. So when they have to adapt technology, even if they have technology, they have to adapt a new kind of technology. They have to change their way of doing work. Internally, there is resistance to change. So what I'm seeing is, at some level, if the company understands that needs to be done, that they need to get to this connected world, then there are always people in the company who understand the core business, who are excited about technology. And so there are pockets of innovation that's happening in the company. And as the company understands the value of this from a business sense, then they create an innovation center, or they fund a small pilot where they test this out, and then they kind of start scaling from there. So it's an iterative process. It's not like, you just say, okay, we're going to add connectivity, and boom, then the whole business changes, because you have existing sales channels, existing jobs, which do one thing, that's bringing revenues. So it's very hard to change that. I saw that in eBay, where they were used to the website, which was their interface bringing bulk of the money. And then when mobile was taking off and customers were switching to phones, we had apps on the phone. But then when you started thinking about, okay, is the money going to come from mobile? Are we going to fund the mobile division to go manage our customers? Are we going to give money, internal budget, to the desktop business? There was internal conflict. Finally, it was all for the same customer, but we had to adapt. So it's an ongoing digital transformation challenge. In fact, I'm a chair of the strategic advisory board for Barcelona Technology School, which is which runs a master's program for digital transformation. I don't know of many universities which have a digital transformation program, but most of the business schools are adding elements of technology, understanding the business sides of it as one of the aspects that they're teaching. But our academic setup is today to teach hardware to people, software to people, business to people. It's very siloed, and I think that will change eventually, but we're not there. From an academic perspective, we're not there. from a business transformation, I think it's a journey and people are on the journey.
Right. And I think the trend that Ken and I have seen is that it's not that we haven't seen change in our careers, and I'm sure you have too, but it seems like the rate of change is just really, really ramped up. And I think one of the biggest challenges some of the major players in our industry is they have legacy systems out there that they have to support. And at the same time, they have to look into the future. So in many ways, it's very, very challenging time to be in business. But look out in the future, you sort of see the workspace changing a bit. Tell us about your concept of the pod.
Okay. I think it's a very radical idea in terms of where workspace would change. So today we have this concept of a building as something that's fixed in space. And we live in a certain buildings, and then we drive up, and then we go to other buildings where we work. So my concept of a pod that I wrote about, and I'm kind of seeing concepts of this coming from other automakers also. But originally when I wrote about it, I was just thinking, if I'm going to have an autonomous vehicle that is going to drive me to work, then why do I have to go to this other building called work? Why can't that vehicle become my workspace? And so from there, I started thinking, okay, then, all my different places I would go see the dentist, I would go to the nail salon, I would go to various coffee shops. All of them could start becoming mobile. So this is out there. This is not my 2030 driverless prediction. It's my 2050 prediction, where I see the mobile vehicle, which is autonomous, becoming a sort of workspace. And so
if I understood that is incredible concept there. So you're saying instead of us driving to the hair salon pulls up in front of the place where you're at, in front of my iPod or in front of my vehicle, I get into that space, and then when it's done with me, it can move on to somebody else, and
yes.
Like the Jetsons.
So I pick up the phone. I pick up the phone and get an appointment to go to the hair salon, and the hair salon comes to my house and picks me up. And wow. It does what it does, and I'm driving around, enjoying myself while it's moving around. And so it has to optimize for the next customer. It has to optimize for where I want to go. If it's going to come to my house, pick me, do my hair, drop me back home, it doesn't make economic sense. But if it manages, I want to go to the hair salon, and then from there, I want to go meet a friend for coffee. So it could optimize my trip, and then it could have another customer, which it's going to pick up from the next town where I'm going for coffee. So the operations of that whole logistics is what autonomous vehicles companies are building out for. It's called mobility platform. So they actually manage the logistics of what vehicles should I send Ken for the hair salon work so that I can drop him next for coffee. So I see a mix of buildings and mobile buildings, essentially.
Very cool. So Uber 3.0, so to speak. I got one more question for you, and we may or may not use this in the podcast, but it fascinates me. My understanding of artificial intelligence is that it's really, really good at sort of doing repetitive tasks, like, scanning stuff or counting something or whatever. And which is kind of cool. But then what I'm understanding is now they're actually building in empathetic algorithms where they're able to actually pick up on emotions, maybe even better, than human beings do. So I guess the gist of my question, it's a two-part question. How long before, and I'll just use this as an example, Howard Schultz from Starbucks, I guess he's running for president now, so maybe that's not a good example. But before Starbucks now, I go and my barista now is a robot that assumes whatever face I like, and through facial recognition, it goes, "Hi, Eric." It knows what my drink is. It knows how I'm doing. It asks about my wife and kids, and makes my coffee 24/7. Never gets sick. I don't have to pay health insurance on it. But how long before that happens, or something like that?
So there's a lot more of these robots that are. First, there are robots being tested everywhere. So the robots could do various different things. So there is a robot in San Jose Airport called Norma, which basically helps people figure out where to go. Where's my bathroom, and where's the coffee shop, and where's there's less line I could go, kind of basic thing, or direction to a different terminal. Then there is the robot, which is in the, like what you're talking about, in the coffee shop or the front end customer service. So a lot of that is being tested. And in Silicon Valley, we have a lot of delivery robots. They do their job fine. But in Asia, they're actually replacing real people and saying, okay, I don't need a front desk person. This robot is going to be it.
Yeah.
And we are nowhere near that, right? Because
okay.
I think there is something we take for granted in the human interaction that is so much needed. So it's not that you exactly know that I need coffee at this time, you know exactly what coffee I want, but there is something more to the human interaction which cannot be replaced. So there's a lot of tests. They do that. There was this restaurant in China which just got rid of every person and then bought a bunch of robots. And then they fired a whole bunch of robots and brought people back. So it's an iterative cycle. But the part you mentioned about the emotions, there is 2 dimensions of it. One is there is research being done in getting the machine, I wouldn't say pretend, but that's exactly what it is. Like the machine to actually understand and behave more like a human from an emotional perspective. There's research. So that when I interact with my voice assistant at home, or when I talk, like the building could become a thing. So I enter the building has intelligence. It sets the temperature the way I need it. It does everything for me without even communicating, or kind of communicating very subtly. That could happen. That is one. The other thing is, as more and more, you actually read my book, so this is like in the closing of most of my books, I write about this. As we have more and more devices, robots, drones, artificial intelligence, algorithms around us, we as humans will project what we want to see in the device. And so we will become attached to it. We give it names, like Alexa is like another pet in my house. Mm-hmm. So there's an example of this. There is a delivery bot that runs around in Berkeley, California, in the University of Berkeley area. And I've seen it where it just drives around. It's like this little box. It delivers food and grocery, and people don't seem to care. So I remember the first time I ran behind it, chased it, and took a little video. And people were just appeared very immune, and they were walking around. And then in the Berkeley University of Berkeley campus, it had some accident. It burst into a flame. And people, when you have a bicycle accident or something like that, people come and put candles and vigil. People did that to this dead robot. I'm not kidding. And it was not like a joke. It was real.
Wow.
So that's the part where we are going to go create a whole new world. It is not just about changing to convenience. We are going to interact with the machines in a very different way. And we are not going to lose our emotional side, even if we hide it all macho. And we are. That's part of our humanity. That I have faith that's going to make this a good, positive world for all of us.
All right. Well, we better end the show right there, Eric, because that's a good note. Well, that's a good summary there.
Well, how do people get hold of you, Sudha, if they want to know more? I mean, obviously, you get your books, you can get on Amazon. But website or what else are you up to, and how can our community?
So I have a habit of sharing on all possible social channels. So I'm active on LinkedIn. I have a site called iotdisruptions.com where people can sign up for a newsletter and I send them stuff. I have a very active YouTube where if you don't want to interact with me, if you want to interact with me, come to my website, sign up for my newsletter. If you just want to read my stuff, go follow me on LinkedIn. Or if you just want to see videos and interviews and my class lessons and stuff, my YouTube channel is one. And I have this site called Driverless World School where you can come and I can actually teach you what I'm teaching at Stanford for you to move into this new exciting world and build your business.
Well, that's so awesome. Great. Can't tell you how much we appreciate you taking time to come on, and hopefully we'll get you back on in 6 months or a year, and we'll keep up with you and encourage our community to check you out. So good stuff there. And so
thank you so much.
So Kenny, what great stuff from Sudha, and I'm really, really excited about what she had to say. And it's interesting because the thing that sort of caught me was her timeline seems to be a lot longer than some of the other people that I've talked to, futurist or listened to. So it's encouraging. So I think there's not a question of, are these changes going to happen? It's just how long it's going to take and when.
Sure, and I think we plugged that a couple too about the rate of adoption and how willingly people on different levels, like she said, the thing with pockets inside of a big company or a corporation, it's good to everybody has an idea that the music notes are changing, so get the right sheet of music so you're current. And even if you don't sing or play an instrument, you at least know where the organization's heading, and then it'll develop, pocket by pocket. It'll evolve to survive or it won't survive. So it's change is inevitable, and I think too that we, like you say, by grounding things. I really like the industry. We identified again the big shortage of people, and we got to make our industry more interesting, more appealing to some of that brain power out there, so we get our share of it.
We'll talk about brain power. Our next guest, I think, is going to sort of take this futuristic stuff and help us ground it to today. So how about introducing him?
Love to, Eric, and you're right. This guy grounds us into reality. So when we talk about future, past, present, and future, Mike Schwan, who is the Central California Regional Manager for Total Controls, a division of RSD, and one of the most prolific experts in distribution. I met Mike about 20 years ago when he was on the council with Johnson Controls, I believe, and I was very impressed at how well he knew the business then. And 20 years later, I'm sure his experience has just grown. So welcome to the show, Michael.
Thank you.
Mike.
Great to be with you guys.
Oh, man.
Long time industry guys right here.
Well, that's for sure. And I want to sort of echo what Kenny said. I mean, Mike's not only one of the smartest guys in the room. I mean, he's one of the nicest, most articulate guys. I think a lot of times you get controls guys in the room and we all want to talk and nobody wants to listen. And Mike, one of the things that impresses me about you is you're very articulate, but you also listen. You give people sort of space to have their opinion. So RSD is lucky to have you, and we're lucky to have you as a guest.
Than you.
You're welcome.
I'm lucky to have you guys as friends.
Well, right back at you, my man.
I forgot one thing, though. He's the #1 Fresno State Bulldog fan in the world. #1.
Well, and I hate to tell you, for all you people in Georgia, Mike will tell you that, yeah, there you go. That the Georgia Bulldogs aren't the real Bulldogs that Fresno State is. Well, Mike, tell us a little bit what RSD does.
Well, RSD is, has two divisions. One is the RSD side, which is the main supplier for refrigeration, air conditioning products. They've gotten into the equipment side as well. They're a rude distributor. We also just took on Temp Master and Quantatech chillers. We're moving into more equipment, and then you have on the other side, you have Total Control, which is a division of RSD, and that's the whole building automation side of the business. So I work with some great people. We're definitely one of the major players in the Western United States, and I really enjoy working here.
Well, you guys really are. And in a minute, I'm going to ask you to sort of take me through the journey. But RSD, Total Control, the division you're with, I was sort of impressed. You guys do things a little bit differently. So for, the customers on the West Coast, maybe an owner or a contractor that's not working with you, sort of what makes you guys a little bit different, or maybe a lot different, actually?
Well, we're there for every customer. I mean, if you're a contractor and you don't, you're not going to invest in having a programming guy and a graphics guy and all that kind of stuff. We do the parts and smarts for those kind of contractors. So we'll take it from drawings to programming to the graphics to working with the IT people on the job, and the contractor's there to do what they want to do, which is install it all. And then you also have the other contractor who says, hey, we're going to do everything. All I need is product. I don't need any panels. I don't need any of that. And we're there for them to help keep them as competitive as possible against the other one-step people. So, we try to cover all of the bases. But, it's not an easy thing. Technology is moving so dang fast, but,
Well, let's cycle back to the technology, because like, Kenny mentioned, you've been in the industry a long time. Talk a little bit about what technology was like, cutting edge technology when you first got into the business, and then sort of walk us through sort of the changes you've seen up till present.
Well, when I first got in the business, the big thing then in automation was the 135 ohm pot that, all the Honeywell
999, yeah.
That's right.
M91. Yeah,
that's right.
For all you millennials out there that are getting excited about the pot, it's not what you think.
Potentiometer.
It was an analog signal.
It was legal everywhere. So, that was kind of, the technology at that time with pneumatics. And then it started moving into the electronic control, Johnson Controls, came out with their electronic stuff. Honeywell started moving in that direction, and we went from ohms to 0 to 10 volts DC. The DSC 1000 on Johnson was, you had this little handheld programming deal, and it was like, wow, this is light years ahead of everybody.
Yeah.
And then we started moving into the DDC stuff, with Honeywell and Johnson, and that was probably the late 80s. And I remember the first time one of my cohorts, who I still work with right now, we were working for a different company, and our goal was drive down and talk to the owner that day and tell him why we needed to have a laptop. And I'll never forget that day. We're driving, down the Highway 99 out of Fresno, and we're discussing our strategy of how we're going to talk to him about why we each needed a laptop. And back then it was, you if you wanted a hot laptop, you bought a 386, and you had the math coprocessor added onto that. And
Right.
and it was, the first laptop was, I think, 2 megs, if even that. And so we left his office and secured those laptops, and got them approved. And then I got home, it's like, I don't even know how to turn a laptop on.
Yeah.
I don't have a computer.
And you had to put the little floppy disk in it. And
That's right. That's right.
Remember? Oh yeah, but I remember the first time I saw a mouse. I was so thrilled with that, And then I had a Toshiba, and I plugged this mouse into it. I couldn't believe it worked. And then I'll tell you, the first time I saw a thumb drive, I thought, that is genius.
I know.
Yeah, the USB thumb drive. I thought, man, who came up with this idea? I'm not going to tell anybody about this until I have to. But it's been quite an ascension of technology, and now. It's a great review because I followed you, spot on. In fact, I remember you were one of the few guys that initially that could do the actual programming. Big thing was for distributors was how deep you can jump into the pool, and how far can you swim. And then some of the program requirements meant you had to have somebody on staff. You had to have 2 people to do this, 2 people to do that.
Right.
Internal champions. They had all of the ways to solicit people, but there were certain people that could get it and do the dance and play the music. And I thought you were one of the few guys that really got that early on. I think that's why you had such a great success and head start, was that you liked technology. You loved it.
Yes, absolutely. Well, I don't do programming really anymore unless it's got to do with the older stuff. Then they come in and, hey, we got a UNT.
DX 9100, yeah.
Come get the old guy.
How do we do that? What is this?
But, I feel like if you're a distributor, you got to have those people on staff so that the customer, you can't take care of a customer if you don't know how to do that kind of stuff.
Right.
And if, just like we go talk to engineers as well, and we do a better job with the engineer than what most contractors do, because their job is contracting. They're not necessarily very good at talking to engineers. And so, that's just kind of how I started my, how I did business, and I love that way, still doing it today, where, we work with the engineer, we do all their drawings, we do all their specs, and we drive that business to our contractors, and that's our value. So
that is a key piece. And Mike, I'm so glad you said that, because really and truly, a lot of people go, what do the distributors do? We got these internet only distributors are out there, and yes, sure, you can get some parts less expensive, but you're not probably going to get the support. You're certainly not going to get somebody to go out and help you create a market.
Right.
You start thinking about the cost of a salesperson and training a salesperson and having a salesperson be effective. And I got to tell you, in this age that we're in now, my biggest cost as a distributor is my salespeople, because it's hard for them to get access. I think one of the commonalities when you and Kenny and I first got in the business, we could walk into any place on the planet, any school board, any hospital, any building, because among other things, the maintenance staffs were bloated. So if you're a maintenance guy, you could talk to a sales guy, you could work. Well, I'll go sit with the guy and eat the donuts. So we had access, right?
Yes.
So, but now it is, if you don't know somebody, you're probably not getting in. And can you imagine trying to go through the back door to a hospital now to get in to see somebody?
Not happening.
Or a school, you get shot.
Right.
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 So it's a different.
And where the business has changed is, we used to be able to go in and, and talk to those maintenance guys, but today you're in there talking to the IT guy.
Yeah.
That's where it begins.
Good point.
Because if you don't have IT department involved, you might as well just step back out the door, because you're done. Because the facilities people don't have any. It doesn't start with them. It starts with the IT department.
Well, the other thing that's so screwy now, and now we're sort of waxing because we're obviously distributors, and the other thing that really gets bad, so they've sort of gotten the facilities people out where you don't have access to them, but even more so, now the facilities people in most cases don't have the opportunity to buy stuff. So it used to be that you would go help somebody out, spend time solving a problem for them, and they would repay you by buying the product from you.
Right.
And so many of these organizations now, they got purchasing people that are golden on saving a nickel or a penny on something. So, what we're sort of experiencing is that a lot of the facilities people are in a bit of alerts now because a lot of people don't want to help them. It's
Yeah, you're right.
I'll figure out what you need and how to fix this problem, and then your purchasing people is going to go somewhere else. So we'll buy it from somebody else to save a nickel.
Well, bingo. And I think the intervention point that we were talking about, disruption at some point, how that would be one of the typical descriptions of disruption was the internet and e-commerce. All of a sudden, our restricted territories had holes in them, and then all the fences were down, and pretty soon the commercial components business became very, very lucrative to these non-stocking warehouse people that were able to compete on a national level with special pricing because they went after certain one-step customers and became their interface into all this product. And then they kept going into the two-step world. And then next thing you know, there were certain, we lost a lot of that used to be, I wouldn't say the aftermarket business, and then the easy business.
Sure.
Right. And if you look in Wikipedia under the definition of stupid, they got pictures of the three of us because they're going, definition of stupid is a distributor that obeys the territory boundaries when everybody else is selling into their territory. Right.
Right. Yeah, that's that.
The game's just changed. It's just changed a bunch.
It has. And I think one other thing that's really changed in the business is, when we go back 20 years ago to the companies that we were dealing with, the reps were pretty good, intelligent, they understood what they were selling. They may not, do programming stuff, but they knew their product line. Today, that's not the case. I mean, they don't know.
Yeah.
They don't even know their own products. What they really do. I had one of my reps called me a couple weeks ago and says, "Mike, I've got a contractor that really is having some difficulty getting some help at a winery that's got controls in it." And I said, "Okay, well, what's a winery?" So he told me. I said, "Well, I did that job like 10 years ago." So I called the contractor that was now taking care of it, and he starts telling me what's going on, and we start talking. He goes, "You don't know how refreshing it is to finally talk to somebody that actually knows what I'm going
the hell they're talking about."
Says, "I've been talking to this rep for a month and a half, and I've gotten absolutely zero information from him." And I thought, that's what's wrong with the business today.
Right.
Is those reps don't even they don't know how to take care of that end customer. So we ended up taking care of it. So replaced their Jace, reprogrammed, did all new graphics, and the guy is just thrilled to death. The contractor's happy, the end user's happy, and that's where I think we're losing some trust today.
It's well said, Mike. And I think the deal for me is it's like, full service distributors like, you guys, Total Control, Stromquist, DMS Controls Group, and other ones. I mean, we provide those services. It's just more difficult for guys like us to survive in the world we're in, because at the end of the day, everybody wants to get the revenue from the sales. Nobody really wants to go out and sell it, and nobody SureSec didn't want to go out and support it, with the exception of the integrators. The integrators, well, I think at that level, that's where they make their bread and butter. But I'm talking about the distribution chain from manufacturer through distributor. And and we've seen not all companies. Some companies really still have really good reps that are technical, know what they're doing. But other players, they're sort of skimping on that, and they want to quote unquote be business managers. And it's tough. And we sort of digress a little bit, because you know what? It's always been versions of that. But to Kenny's point, with the age of the internet, where it's sort of acceptable for people to, well, I'll use Mike or Ken and figure out what I need, and then the purchasing people are going to come over and buy it, Google it and take the cheapest price. And I think that the encouraging news is that I think the people in the know really realize that there's no such thing as a free lunch, and they're getting wise to that. And they get screwed over where they don't get the delivery, or they don't get the support, or they don't get the right thing. And so I think people are getting wise to that. But I got to say, the interesting thing when you talk about that laptop, Mike, my guess is that first laptop you bought and going out and buying a really good one today, you're probably paying less money today than you were back then and getting a lot more.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. That laptop we bought was $3,000.
Yeah.
And the screen was, I think, 5 inches.
It was black and white.
Black and white.
There's another aspect to this too, and I'm glad you went back on the computer. The way things either increase in value and decrease in value. In the old days of the inventory was king, and the whole idea was you'd invest in these new 1,000 products, the 1,000 series, and then they'd be replaced by the 2,000 series. And
right.
All of a sudden, inventories that used to be gold and couldn't, once you had it in inventory, that was like money in the bank. It would grow in value. It became, and the scarcity took place. You were protected, and then some magical thing happened. A magic wand came down, and the inventory hit the warehouse and said, "This stuff's crap." Once they put that 2,000 on the street, that 1,000 series is junk.
Yeah.
And we're deliberately not going to let that work together with our 2,000 series because hey, we want you to take the 1,000 series out and sell more 2,000. I mean, so we went to this cat and mouse game with technology where we saw a reversal of appreciation for inventories, and that was a strange thing. I remember it took a lot of people a lot of time to get used to that, and what to actually have in stock, and where having it in stock was a blessing, whether it was flame safeguard or combustion controls or valves. I mean, how many times did you reorder your 6-inch 3-way mixing valves? I mean, you used to have 5 or 6 of them. Now you'd be lucky you can see anybody. There might be 1 or 2 people who have one of them because, hey, just something happened.
And that's really when you look at distribution today. That's really, I think, what's really hurting a lot of companies is what that product that you just ordered. Its life cycle is so short now because everything getting replaced at such a higher rate of speed. It used to be you could have those gas valves and stuff sitting there, and 8 years from now it's still the same gas valve.
Right.
Today, that's not the case,
Right.
and it's costing us a ton of money.
Right.
So that's another interesting wrinkle to use.
Yes.
Well, and I think I think distribution is important. Is still going to stay important, but I think for distributors to survive, they're going to have to stay relative. So, Mike, for our distributor listeners out there, what do you think we need to do to stay relevant and grow with these changes we're seeing?
Well, the first thing is you've got to stay current with the technology that's coming through. I understand, you don't want to throw all that stuff away that you've got sitting on your shelf that you ordered a lot of, and now it's being replaced by something else. But you've really got to, your counter people, everybody in the organization has got to accept that the technology is going to change, and it may not be with your major manufacturers. And you may have to look at some of the smaller manufacturers because they're capable of changing real fast. And they're finding their niches, and it's eating away from the major people, and the major people are just too dang slow to respond to those market changes.
Yeah. Bingo. That's well said.
It's like wireless controllers. I mean, you look at our major manufacturers; they're not there. They are not in that business yet, and yet you got other manufacturers that small people that got these wireless thermostats that we're just kicking butt with, and the major manufacturers are going, well, I don't think it's going to last very long. It's just a trend. No, it isn't.
Yeah, it's here.
Let's direct coupled actuator.
It's only a trend to you because you don't have one.
Right. That's
Do you remember the direct coupled actuator war, where we had mono, and you had the big three? I mean, BC had a super bad, foot-mounted actuator.
Yep.
JCI had one. Honeywell had, probably the lead on the mod motor business.
Yep.
And when that little dinky thing came from Germany or Switzerland, care of one of our first Hall of Fame inductee.
That's right.
He showed it to us I looked at it and said, that's too clever. I mean, that's just, that's not fair. I mean, and then we got bypassed on the first couple rounds, and then we finally got it. And then next thing you know, they had 70-80% of the market, and then just changed it. Everybody flipped over dead, and then had to have them immediately. And then you talk about inventories. We must have had 200 of those mod motors. Because they made you have different things. You had spring return. You had not, I mean, like you said, and then you had remember those adapters that you could change the signal? That was a Q7300s or whatever. I forget what they were, but 7320A interface modules. And you sold them like toilet paper because, and then all of a sudden it all went away.
Yeah.
So your point about the wireless, it's spooky that, the people that are running these things, that's why we put such a big emphasis on executives, because you got to have a magic thumb. You got to have, like you said, everybody has to adopt a new technology. Whether or not it really comes in and changes things immediately, being aware of it and being sensitive to the impacts is like a philosophy that everybody has to have, from the shipper to the CEO. And certain companies do, and some companies don't.
Yeah. Well, and a piece of advice one of my teachers gave me once: when you're in times that are changing like this, we all have our sacred cows, which is sort of what we're talking about. And his advice was, when you have sacred cows in fast changing time, make hamburger. So Mike, what technologies are you most excited about now?
It's the wireless side.
Yeah.
I love the technology. I'm not saying that, when this whole thing started, you had proprietary wireless, and then became Zigbee, and then Zigbee Pro, and I understand that there's issues with there's not really good standardization, but you know what? It doesn't matter. It comes down to what is going to be the most cost-effective way to get those controls in a building, and if you can do it wirelessly and it works well, versus pulling a bus all the way through, these, especially these smaller to medium-sized buildings. That's what the contractor is going to do, and the manufacturers have got to get past, well, that's not what, we've got too much invested in this other stuff. You're going to be bypassed, and we're going to be bypassed. Our contractor is going to get bypassed. So I'm really amazed at how well this wireless stuff is working right now. I mean, it's kick butt.
Yeah. Well, and it's interesting too, in fairness to some of the older people that are tried and trues, they've got these legacy systems out there they have to support. And it is kind of unfair that, these companies are jumping in with this new technology boom. I mean, they don't have the legacy. They don't have to support that. So they are able to be nimble. They are able to be quick. And, I would not want to be, as Kenny said, one of those executives from one of the major companies trying to figure out how to navigate these waters, because it's not easy. So it's not that we don't have sympathy for them. We do, but the realities are the realities, and we're all going to have to sober up and make adjustments. I mean,
absolutely.
From the street to the consulting engineers to the building owners. I mean, we're all in a new age.
Well, plus the impact of like the protocols. I mean, we all fell in love with the Tritium J's when it first came out, because it was inconceivable that you could normalize languages and have multiple things and have LAN and BACnet in the same controller. It's like, wow, is this crazy?
Right.
And the opportunities it did. And then you had the drivers come out, and the ways to integrate friendly or unfriendly ways. And then everybody tried to play. Nobody played nice with each other, and all of a sudden everybody plays real nice. And finally, BACnet got that stamp, the BTL, and that meant, if it's BACnet, man, it's going to work, and you can start really diving into the best in class of controllers and different things. But then, with your point about wireless, when they came up with, I think it was Canby or whoever, the very first Can2Go, I think the Canby protocol, but the first person that actually took a Wi-Fi or an Ocean point or a Zigbee point and made it BACnet, I thought that was black magic too. I said, this is impossible. This is so great. Yeah. I mean, who's coming up with these solutions? And then what happens? Can2Go gets bought out by Schneider, and then next thing you know, the whole zigzag occurs. And if you weren't inside the channel, you're outside the channel, and bingo. So you had to, and then Wi-Fi. I agree too. And it's like the concept of having a router at every conceivable place on Earth, and then allowing you to connect to that Wi-Fi network created a tremendous launch of innovation. It really changed our industry.
Absolutely.
All the sensors that could now be picked up wirelessly. I thought the remote sensors wireless was one of the coolest things too. Remember, they had the thermostat,
right?
You had your averaging, and then you had this incredible, 4, 16, whatever, and you had to have 90 sensors and fake sensors and whatever to get the signals all coherent. And then all of a sudden, I think it was White Roger, somebody came out with a wireless sensor to the thermostat, and I said, "Damn, this is good stuff." We're going to sell a lot of these bad boys, and so it's going. So it's fun to talk about it. But I think Eric mentioned we now are 2019. We're seeing that the major manufacturers are being seriously wrested away by the smaller manufacturers' ability to be nimble and get products to the market quicker. And there seems to be these inherent headwinds with major manufacturers. But do you think that the major manufacturers can install future-proof capabilities now and catch up and stay viable? We see one manufacturer getting the equipment, and that's a pretty clever move, because then all of a sudden they're not dependent solely on building automation and those components. We're seeing the architecture shrink. So we used to have these field level controllers and supervisor level control, and that was good because the job took 3 sets of controllers at least, and now they're being replaced because the damn controller out there on the VAV is going right into the network, into the field or the server, or in certain cases. But how does a major manufacturer get back in the game and become important again? I mean, do you think they're doing it, or do you think that we're seeing something, this might be a departure point?
I think this, our next move that I see right now, there's 2 different situations that technology is moving toward. One is, again, as we're talking about, wireless, and the other is IP based. And there again, I mean, you got certain manufacturers that if they don't have an IP based device or coming out with one, their answer is, you don't want to go that direction. You don't want to go that direction. It's you hear the same thing from people that, what else is kicking our butt right now? VRF. It's there is no controls needed on VRF other than the Jace if you want to tie everything together. So our offering just went away. So and the same thing's happened with the IP-based devices. People, for up until the last few years, it was like, keep IT out of our from a facilities guy. We don't, just keep IT away. Today, IT is dictating it all, and that's why IP controllers are being in demand right now. I've got school districts that have been hardwire communication bus, for the last 25 years, and they are changing their specs right now 100% to go IP-based controllers everywhere. And this was the same school district that said, keep IT out of our department.
Wow. Yeah.
Right.
Mike, so where do you see, and we're going to have to sort of wind it down here a little bit. This is such a fascinating conversation, and we're going to definitely have to have you back on, Mike, because this is, as you know, we could probably go on for hours, and maybe next time we'll have you on, we'll all have a cocktail or something, and we'll go on for days.
I'm all for that.
But sort of looking out into the future, where do you see things 4 or 5 years from now at the rate we're going at?
Well, the first thing I see is a big labor shortage, on especially from the technical side of it. Every contractor's facing this. We're facing it. Getting the labor and the smarts of the younger generation coming in through to understand our business is very difficult to do. And that's I think that's the biggest hurdle we have in our business, the whole business. You can be a programming person, but as these controls are becoming smarter and smarter and plug and play, you're not needing that kind of person anymore. And the contractor's not gearing up, on their end to make it even more simple. They think controls is still this, what it is, what it's been, where you need a programming guy and all that. But that's where I see in 5 years is so much more of what we're doing is plug and play. And that affects bottom line. Our margins are going to come down. There's going to be more players that you've never heard of before. That's kind of what I see happening. I don't know if I'm on the right track or not, but that's what I see.
No, you're absolutely right, because it has to. In other words, nature abhors a vacuum, and as you brought out, that was probably one of the most important things we used to talk about. Is there's not enough people to do a whole lot of work. I mean, just on one hand, we read and we publish things. The DOE says that 80% of our buildings are not under enough control. We have a limited amount of energy, so we have to get better in the smart grid. Why can't you guys take a technology and get it to those 80% of the market that's underserved? People to do it, and then the answer is going to be technology. Just like you said, somebody's going to figure out a way to make it that a mailman could deliver controls that the people can open up the box and put it in themselves. Plug this module into this module, and this module into that module, and then we'll program it remotely. You mount your own damn stuff, and we'll because that's what's going to happen. I mean, how else can it fit? How else can we meet the requirement on one hand? Because we had a genius woman on the show.
We came on right before you did, Mike.
And she's telling us about, we know that there's a limited amount of, power and generation, and how sustainable power and microgrids are going to be necessary, and how a car can drive around, collect solar light, and through braking systems generate, charges battery, and then you plug the car into the building and it powers the building. I mean, imagine the radical concepts, that are being played with, So we're, Eric, you're going to be powering your Tesla.
Listen, right now, because I have it on pretty good authority that Elon Musk occasionally listens to our show. Elon, if you're listening, do we have a business opportunity for you? How would you guys like to? We'll form the Tesla Controls Company, Smart Building Controls Company. Elon,
I'm in.
No problem. We got a distribution network ready to go. Just reach out to me.
Tesla Smart Controls. Wouldn't that be something?
I like that.
Yeah, and he's already got the battery technology. We'll control buildings off of batteries. And Elon, this is much better. And come on our show. We won't give you a pot like Joe Rogan did, but come on our show.
We can if you want, Elon. We don't mind.
Yeah.
Mike's in California. Just visit with Mike. And
we'll stay on Earth to do this.
There you go, brother. Hey, Mike, how do people get hold of you guys? I know after hearing this interview, we got some people in California that are going to want to reach out and connect with you. Website
is www.rsd.net. Or you can do www.rsdtotalcontrol.com. We're there for everybody.
Yeah, Mike, cool. Man, appreciate it, brother. Listen, we're getting you back on soon. Thank you so much for taking some time to be on the show with us.
You're welcome. Go Dogs.
All right. And man, Kenny, I tell you, man, handsome Mike Schwan, one of my favorite people in the industry. And if you ever get a chance to work with this guy, please do, man, because I tell you what, he is, like I said earlier in the show, man, he's not only one of the smartest guys in the room, he's one of the nicest guys in the room, and he takes care of people. That's how he survived so long.
And he's a big Bulldog fan. Go Bulldogs.
Go Bulldog. Go Bulldogs. Kenny, before we hop off, please visit the site this week. I think the number one post that you might want to check out is the official Control Trends Award video. It's posted on Control Trends now.
It sure is. And again, thank you to all the people that made that event happen. You finally closing the books on everything and putting 2018 Control Trends Awards in the archives. I've loved the work you've done so far on bringing the Control Trends Awards historically on another site. We'll keep developing that, and so that it gets better. It's going to be hard to top the one at Fox Theater, but we're heavily pursuing the Orlando opportunities and venues, and looks like we're going to have a 2019 here coming up.
We are, because listen, we're all about the future, and Kenny, the future's so bright, we got to wear shades. All right, brother. That's another week on Control Talk Now, your Smart Buildings Videocast and podcast. Hope you have a great week. Remember, be bold, stay in control, think about the future so that you can be relevant.
Indeed, Eric.
Indeed, Kenny Smyers, and that's in the wrap.
There's a knock at the door, but don't freeze in your tracks. It's that chance that you've been waiting for. It's the light coming through the cracks.